Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Welcome to my review for Red Ranger Becomes an Adventurer, Episode 3. Continuing to enjoy this series. I don't think I enjoyed this as much as last week. It eased up a little bit on like the Sentai tropes and characters reacting to them, but that's I think a good thing. They had some of those moments, but I don't think they should solely rely on that. I think this almost felt more traditionally like the fantasy story they were going with moments of the Sentai reactions to it. As we introduced to two other characters, Logi and Tell Tina, and the question is, tell Tina what? I don't know. Anyway, so we're introduced to them. They're the ones that found that seed that attached to that old man, and they're basically like, hey, people are using this magic to screw up people. Will you help us? And we think that the new, like, Sorcerer Supreme or whatever it is, the Mage Guardian, is behind it. And so Yidra's obviously like, this is perfect. I can get in with the royal family and also get one up on this dude that usurped my dad. And so she agrees, and then of course Red's like, I want to help. But then the knight's like, you can't help, you're not up to the stuff, and you're Togo, right? And he's like, don't call me Togo, call me Red. I'm like, I'm gonna call him Red. It gives me an excuse not to remember anyone's name, and I can just call you by color, even though I just said his name was Togo. But anyway, they have to do a classic fight, like to test his strength or whatever, and that's where you get the Sentai trope making fun of stuff. And I like that both of their characters, Tell Tina and Bozo, I forgot his name, Logi, Bozo. Their reactions were different. I like they were more tame. Tell Tina was more like, ooh, a new magic, and the other guy just wasn't impressed at all. I like how I forget his name almost immediately. It reminds me of the episode of The Office where they forgot the IT guy's name. Like, I just said my name was Nick. Yeah, I know it is. Sport. Anyway, like, he's kind of unimpressed, and I did kind of like that, because last week we had those two adventurer characters having a similar reaction to Yidra, and I like that the reactions were a little bit different, but the real reactions come in when they're fighting, and he decides that, I don't care about Zordon's rules, I'm gonna escalate a battle, and he just summons the Megazord, which I thought was really funny, but it kind of went in some unexpected ways. Like, first of all, this is way too big a reaction, and it's like, what the hell, this is kind of funny. But also then, he's too fast that he can't hit him, which I thought was kind of an interesting thing, where he's strong enough to actually deal damage to the Megazord, and he's also too fast, but then if he swings the sword real hard, it flies him away like Team Rocket, which is just kind of funny. So I like the resolution of that, and then he agrees to let him join, but he's like, but I'm not going to be your friend, and he's like, that's the exact thing that happens before we become best friends, which I thought all throughout the episode, which is, I want to touch on some Sentai tropes here, and they do talk about that again when they form the Megazord, and Tell Tina's in there with him, and Yidra's like, I thought you had to be really close friends with him. He's like, yeah, we met and we agreed we had the same goal. We're like best friends now. And it's funny because that is so Sentai, and there was a commenter last week that said they think that they're taking the Sentai tropes too far. Maybe accentuating a little bit, but honestly, I think the thing that for me is the funniest about them putting these Sentai tropes in the show and making fun of them is it's, in my opinion, completely straightforward. Like, some Sentai series will be cheesier and on the nose with it than others, but by and large, everything he's doing does not feel like an exaggeration. Like, I've seen Sentai characters do this all the time, forming the quick bonds, all that stuff. Like, it's funny because it's true. It's not like an over-the-top exaggeration, and I also couldn't help but think of RDC World's video that made fun of animes where characters form bonds really fast, which is funny because there's something I'm going to talk about at the end where there's a lot of crossover between Toku and anime's characters, and both in Toku and in anime you'll have characters forming friendships unrealistically quickly. Like, that video cracked me up because it's like these two characters like literally pass each other and say hey, and then 2 seconds later one of them gets killed and he's like, he was my best friend! That's what that felt like, but again, Sentai does that all the time. I thought it was funny because it's true. Honestly, I thought the episode was going to end when they decided to adventure together, but there was like a whole other 5 minutes where they arrive at this town that's under the rule of a guy who I'm going to call Yogurt. It was something else like Logurt, but I think it's funner to call him Yogurt. And he has an exchange with Red that's very cliche, you know, I'm going to subjugate these people as you can't because it's wrong and Sentai reasons. And it was such a classic conversation that I've seen in both anime and Sentai, and it's just interesting seeing those lines bleed of like, that's how similar they are in a lot of ways. And I thought about that with the friendship thing and this here. I'm like, this is a trope of this type of character interacting with a villain that exists in both Sentai and Rider. And then you have, my god, I keep forgetting this guy's name, Logi. He's like kind of just watching Red get beaten up, and he's like, I'm just kind of enjoying watching this, but also tactically, I should, you know, take in this guy's moves and see what I can do. And we just kind of end on a cliffhanger of him getting beat up, and, you know, presumably Logi will join the fight next week. But yeah, I'm still really enjoying the show. I like that this week was more heavy on kind of progressing the main plot, and we didn't rely so much on the Sentai stuff. Not that I don't love that, that's still my favorite part of it, but I think it kept a nice balance. and I'm continuing to enjoy that. Last thing I wanted to touch on in regards to bonus stuff is a couple people brought this to my attention. They're like, what did you think of the Princess Ranger form in the ending? Which I didn't see, because I always skip the openings and endings, but I fast-forwarded through it, and I guess that is kind of a spoiler, but that's kind of neat. Like, when they all got in the Megazord this week, I'm like, I'd be shocked if by the end of this series, the team they form, whether it's this four or maybe one other person, they need one other person to be a 5-person Sentai, but if they didn't become like a mystical Sentai Night Ranger or whatever. But yeah. Anyways, guys, let me know what you thought of this week's episode in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.